The next speaker coming up is a really prominent leader in the Iranian community, as well as a prominent leader here in San Francisco. Mahsa Hakimi, hashtag #MeToo, and she will be giving you an update on her perspective on what's happening in Iran. So here she is, Mahsa Hakimi.
Hi, I'm Mahsa Hakimi. I am the founder of Hakimi Law, a firm in San Francisco, and I have been an LGBTQ and a women's rights activist for almost 3 decades. I'm currently the art commissioner for the city of San Francisco, and I'm also a member of the San Francisco Planning Department Community Equity Advisory Council. I'm very happy to be back at the Women Impact Summit, which I have been asked to share about the first women-led revolution that is taking place currently in Iran. This is a very personal issue to me, as I am an Iranian and an immigrant of the US for the last 35 years. I came here with my family after the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, which established the current Islamic Republic regime, a very conservative, religious-based government that has had a direct effect on me as a young girl, as one of the most important pillars of the government was its anti-women campaigns, specifically the compulsory hijab laws for women, which was enforced through brutality of what became the mortality police for the last 40 years. The government has spent the last 4 decades enforcing gender segregation and forcing women into second-class citizens under the disguise of Islamic values and laws. While women in Iran have been fighting for their rights throughout the last 4 decades, the resistance has continuously been marginalized and silenced by the government's iron fist, as this issue was never considered a human rights issue, but rather a minority resistance issue. And so it never had the tipping point of support of a collective community. However, with the change in the demographics of the population in Iran, which is now more than 60% under 30 today, and the universities actually having more than 60% of their students being women, something extraordinary has happened. So with the access to the global information through the internet and following the recent civil rights movements in the last few years, specifically the gay rights movement, the Me Too movement, and the Black Lives Matter, the resistance by women in Iran has evolved into a human rights issue of right to choose and self-determination, and amplified by the new Gen X in Iran. After the recent election of the conservative president this last year, who campaigned on enforcing the Islamic values and insists on cracking down of the government on the youth on the streets, in the last year, the government has reinstated the re-education centers for the women who the morality police has amplified and focuses harassment, with the objective to basically force them into following the compulsory, the more restrictive compulsory hijab rules. On September 16th of 2022, a young woman in the name of Mahsa Jina Amini, age 22, was arrested on the streets of Tehran by the morality police, who took her into these re-education centers for not wearing her headscarf properly. What was extraordinary in the situation was that while she was in custody, she was brutally beaten, which resulted in her dying, actually going to coma and then dying 3 days later. So the purpose of these, technically these re-education centers were not intended to be punishing to death, but rather re-educating women. So this brutal murder resulted in women taking on the streets of Iran in protest, and they did something extraordinary this time. They united in a simple act of peaceful disobedience, of just removing their headscarf in public, knowing the risk of severe physical punishment. And while the morality police started harassing them, what was also extraordinary was that the young men started joining them in solidarity and standing next to them, chanting the now populist slogan, "Women, Life, Freedom." Now, this was extraordinary because it wasn't a resistance for economic or just political issues, but rather women's rights issues became the center and upfront issue of this movement. So it is now 6 weeks in which people of Iran have taken on the streets in protest for the brutality of the government and to end this gender segregation, which the government has fought back with the iron fist. And to date, over 300 civilians have been murdered on the streets, mostly young people, some as young as 14. But more significantly, what started as a simple act of civil, peaceful resistance for women demanding right to choose has now evolved into a global catalyst for women demanding end to gender segregation and right to the self-determination. Women around the globe have started showing their solidarity by cutting their hair and burning scarves, while global celebrities and world-renowned, influencers, activists, and politicians have voiced solidarity with the women and people of Iran by amplifying the message of woman, life, freedom. It is important for the global community to understand that this is no longer just an anti-government protest in Iran, but the first intersectional feminine revolution in modern history, demanding an end to the global gender segregation and equality for all marginalized. That is why the slogan, "Woman, Life, Freedom," has resonated with the global community who are showing their solidarity outside of Iran by amplifying the voices of the people of Iran through weekly protests throughout the world, online campaigns, international petitions, and keeping the news relevant in international media. However, as the regime in Iran has escalated in response, their response on these peaceful demonstrations in the streets of Iran, the international community has a continued obligation to amplify these voices so that we can make sure we keep the pressure on the Iranian government through international mechanics, such as the UN and Amnesty International, to speak against the human rights violations in Iran. Bottom line, there is power in numbers. So we as the diaspora of the Iranian immigrants in US and civil rights activists outside of Iran, are asking our global allies and communities to help by keeping and spreading the news of what is happening on the streets of Iran to keep the Western media engaged. These conversations cannot just be isolated within the Iranian diaspora community, but it needs to be expanded and continue to be outside of the of that community and more on a global level and international voice. We also ask that you keep posting on social media about what's happening in Iran so that you can keep people engaged and continue the conversation and the pressure. We also ask that you keep pushing the political leaders and international organizations, especially the US, Canada, Europe, and of course the UN and international courts and international amnesty, to put pressure on the Iranian regime to stand in solidarity with the people of Iran and make sure to pass resolutions that will hold the Iranian authorities accountable should they account to flee and take sanctuary in other countries. There are currently petitions circulating in social media for the UN to remove Islamic Republic from the Commission on Status of Women, which we ask that you find and sign, and I'd be happy to share that information if you reach out to me. But more important than anything else, if you do see an Iranian woman, just give them a hug. That's all we ask. And we thank you. And I thank you for this opportunity to talk on this panel. And I look forward to the day that we will not have to be killed for just asking for the right to choose. Thank you for your time. And feel free to reach out to me. I will share my social media if there's any questions I can ask. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Masa Hakimi, for that moving piece and update. Well, today we are done with Asia Pacific, founder of Leading with Consciousness. I have loved and appreciated being your mistress of ceremony. Have a good day.